Okay, so we want to solve 7 to the, here, let me get that a little bit better. 5x minus 3 equals 46. So step 1 is already done. The base to the power is already alone. That's usually our first step. But you know, if we had like a 5 out here multiplied or something, then we would divide both sides by 5. Or if we had a 3 added, then we'd have to subtract 3. You know, we'd have to get rid of any of that stuff that's with the base to power piece. But there's nothing. The base to power is already alone. So good. So that's done. Step 2, it's going to be to ln both sides, because logs are the opposites of exponentials. That's how we handle when x is up in the power zone. We ln both sides. And why is that? Because it's the opposite. Logs are the inverse functions of exponentials. They're the opposites. And so the power now drops down to the front, not the from, but the front of the ln. So this whole power drops down to the front of the ln. So what do we get? 5x minus 3 ln 7 equals ln 46. So that power is out of power. That's big. That's a big step, because the logs are the opposites of exponentials, powers. And so we have that great property of logs. Remember that powers can drop down to the front for any log. That's for natural log. You can actually do regular log on both sides if you want. Regular LG would work just as well. Either way, powers drop down to the front. Now what are we going to do? Well, now we basically, on step 4, distribute and solve for x. So distribute and solve for x on this one. So I'm going to, this ln 7 is going to distribute to both of those, right? Like anything does up against parentheses, it's got to distribute. Now you might wonder, Mr. Where did the parentheses come from? There were no parentheses in the 5x minus 3. Right, remember parentheses, what they are? A lot of people think, well, they mean multiply. Yeah, they sometimes mean multiply, usually mean multiply, but mainly they're a grouping symbol. So in other words, when I'm supposed to take the power and drop it down to the front, if I didn't put parentheses, if I just wrote, let me just write 5x minus 3 without parentheses. If I just wrote 5x minus 3 with no parentheses, that would mean only the 3 is multiplied by the ln 7, not the 5x. And that would be wrong, because the whole 5x minus 3 was the power. So the whole 5x minus 3 must now multiply the ln of 7, which means you got to have parentheses to say this whole group multiplies the ln 7. And then you distribute the ln 7 to both of those. What are you going to get? You're going to get 5x ln 7 minus 3 ln 7 equals ln 46. We good so far? Now we just need to solve this for x. So just add 3 ln 7 to both sides, like that. Boom, boom. We get 5x ln 7 equals ln 46 plus 3 ln 7. Good so far. Last step, just divide. Both the 5 and the ln 7 are just multiplied by the x, so we can get rid of them both at the same time by just dividing them both. 5 ln 7. 5 cancels, ln 7 cancels. X is alone. That's our answer. But now it's kind of tricky to get that on the calculator. Let me help with that. So on the calculator, you must parenthesize that you might put parentheses on the top and the bottom, like that, because both top and bottom, numerator and denominator, have more than one term. More than one item, I should say. More than one item, right? They both do. The top has ln46 and a 3 ln7 has three things. The bottom has a 5 and an ln7. So whenever you use your calculator, if the numerator or the denominator or both have more than one thing in them, more than one item, then you need to parenthesize the numerator and the denominator so that otherwise your calculator will only divide part of the top or the bottom and you'll get the wrong answer. So on my calculator, I'll just do it right now. And also there ends up being parentheses on these individual logs, doesn't there? So you end up with kind of a lot of parentheses. So be careful with all that. It's easy to mess up. So I'm going to do the top and the bottom. And I'm getting 0.9935 to 4 decimal places. So there we go. So let's recap. What did we do on this problem? So when you have x in the power zone, called an exponential, you get the base to power alone. This one already was alone. Step 2, ln both sides. So I did ln on both sides. Step 3, the power drops down to the front. The power came down and put parentheses on it. And then just distribute and solve for x. So I distributed that ln7, 5x ln7 minus 3 ln7, then solve for x, get that x alone, add ln7 to both sides, divide by the 5 and the ln7. And there we go. Be careful with your calculator. Put parentheses around the numerator and denominator. Unless, of course, if you have one of the newer calculators that actually makes it look like a fraction as you enter it, you can see it's a fraction as you enter it, then great. You don't need to mess with parentheses. It knows about the top and the bottom being separate and it's all good. But if you don't, if it all comes on one line, then you need to parenthesize the numerator and the denominator to indicate to the calculator what is the top and what is the bottom separately. There we go.